The telegram arrived at sunrise with news that would upend everything Amelia Harper had built in her 22 years of life, and she read it 3 times before the words truly sank in. Her younger sister was dying in San Francisco, and there was no one else to go to her. Amelia stood on the dusty main street of Boise, Idaho in 1882, clutching the paper so tightly it crumpled at the edges, her heart hammering against her ribs as she calculated the impossible journey ahead. San Francisco was over 500 miles away through some of the most unforgiving territory in the West, and she had exactly 4 days to reach her sister before the doctor said it would be too late. She walked straight to the general store where she worked, her boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each determined step. The owner, Mrs. Caldwell, took one look at her face and knew something terrible had happened. When Amelia explained the situation, the older woman's expression shifted from concern to outright alarm. "You cannot possibly be thinking of making that journey alone," Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice sharp with worry. "The trail is too dangerous, Amelia. There are bandits, rough terrain, wild animals. A woman traveling alone would be a target for every desperado between here and California." But Amelia had already made up her mind. Margaret is only 19. She has no one else. Our parents are gone, and I am all she has in this world. I have to go. Mrs. Caldwell tried again. "At least wait a few days. Find someone traveling that direction, a family perhaps, or a group heading west." "I do not have a few days," Amelia said quietly, and the finality in her voice made Mrs. Caldwell's shoulders sag in defeat. By noon, Amelia had packed her few belongings, withdrawn what little money she had saved, and purchased supplies for the journey. She was loading her pack onto the mare she had borrowed from a neighbor when a deep voice behind her made her turn. "Heard you are planning to ride to San Francisco alone." The man who spoke stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and sun-weathered skin that spoke of years spent outdoors. His dark hair curled slightly at the edges beneath his worn hat, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray and intense. He wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt that sat comfortable on his hips like it belonged there. Amelia recognized him vaguely as someone she had seen around town, but they had never been formally introduced. "That is my business," she said, turning back to her horse, though her hands trembled slightly as she secured the bedroll. "Name is Samuel Vance," he said, not moving from where he stood, "and I am not here to talk you out of it. Folks in town say you are stubborn as they come, so I figured talking would be a waste of breath." She paused, looking at him more carefully. "Then why are you here?" "To ride with you," he said simply. "Trail is too dangerous for anyone alone, much less a woman on her own. I have business in Sacramento anyway, so San Francisco is not much out of my way." Amelia straightened, suspicion flaring in her chest. "I do not need charity, Mr. Vance, and I certainly do not need a stranger thinking I owe him something for his protection." Something flickered across his face, an emotion she could not quite read. "I am not asking for anything. Your sister is dying, and you need to get there fast and safe. I know the trails. I can handle trouble if it comes, and I have got no ill intentions toward you. You can take that or leave it, but either way, I suggest you decide quick because you are burning daylight." She studied him for a long moment, weighing her options. Everything about him seemed genuine, from the directness of his gaze to the calm set of his shoulders. And Mrs. Caldwell's warnings echoed in her mind, along with the stories she had heard of women who disappeared on the western trails, never to be seen again. "If you slow me down, I will leave you behind," she finally said. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Fair enough, but I reckon I will be the one keeping pace with you." They rode out of Boise within the hour, and Amelia set a punishing pace from the start. Samuel said nothing about the speed, simply kept his horse moving alongside hers as they headed southwest toward the Oregon border. The August sun beat down mercilessly, and dust caked on their skin and clothes, but Amelia pushed forward with single-minded determination. They did not talk much that first day. Amelia was too focused on covering ground, and Samuel seemed content with silence. But as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he finally spoke. We need to make camp soon. Horses need rest even if we do not. She wanted to argue, wanted to keep pushing through the night, but she knew he was right. Killing the horses would not get her to Margaret any faster. So when Samuel pointed to a small grove of trees near a creek, she nodded and followed him off the main trail. They worked together to set up camp with an efficiency that surprised her. Samuel took care of the horses while she gathered wood for a fire. He had brought coffee and dried meat, and she had packed bread and some preserved fruit. They ate in silence as darkness settled around them, the fire crackling between them like a small barrier against the vast wilderness. "How do you know the trails so well?" she asked eventually, curiosity getting the better of her exhaustion. Samuel poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "Been working cattle drives since I was 16. Spent the last 8 years moving herds from Texas to Montana and everywhere in between. You learn the land when your life depends on it. And you just happened to have business in Sacramento right when I needed to go to San Francisco." He looked up at her then, and in the firelight his eyes seemed darker, more serious. "No, I heard you were going alone, and I could not let that happen. Made up the Sacramento bit so you would not refuse outright." Amelia's breath caught. "Why would you do that?" "You do not even know me." "Seen you around town for the past 6 months," he said quietly. "You work hard, you are kind to people, and you deserve to reach your sister safely. Seemed like the right thing to do." She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders and stared into the flames. But something had shifted between them, some invisible wall beginning to crack. They rose before dawn and rode hard again, stopping only briefly to water the horses and eat quickly. The terrain grew more challenging as they pushed toward the Nevada border, rocky and unforgiving. Amelia's body ached from the long hours in the saddle, but she gritted her teeth and kept going, thinking of Margaret alone and afraid in a San Francisco hospital bed. On the second night, as they made camp in the shadow of rocky hills, Samuel noticed her wince as she dismounted. Without a word, he heated water over the fire and handed her a cloth. "For your hands," he said. "You are getting blisters." She wanted to refuse, to insist she was fine, but the pain was too real to ignore. She took the cloth gratefully and pressed it against her raw palms. Samuel sat across from her, cleaning his rifle with practiced movements. "Tell me about your sister," he said after a while. Amelia's throat tightened. "Margaret is everything good in the world. She is gentle and funny, always seeing the best in people. After our parents died 3 years ago, she wanted to go to San Francisco to study music. I stayed in Boise to work and send her money. She was doing so well, and then I got the telegram saying she had caught some fever. The doctor said it was bad, that she was asking for me." Her voice broke on the last words, and she looked away quickly, not wanting him to see the tears that threatened to fall. But Samuel's voice when he spoke was soft and understanding. "We will get you there, Amelia. I promise you that." The use of her first name felt intimate somehow, and when she looked back at him, she found him watching her with an expression that made her heart flutter strangely in her chest. She barely knew this man, yet he had put his own life on hold to help her, asking nothing in return. It was the kind of selfless act she had read about in books, but never expected to encounter in real life. "Thank you, Samuel," she said quietly, "for all of this. I know I was cold to you when we started, but I am grateful." He shook his head. "You do not need to thank me. Just focus on getting to your sister." That night, as Amelia lay in her bedroll, staring up at the star-filled sky, she found herself thinking about Samuel in ways that had nothing to do with the journey. The way he moved with such quiet confidence, the gentleness in his hands as he cared for the horses, the steadiness of his presence. She had spent so long being independent, proving she could handle life on her own after her parents' death, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone truly looking out for her. The third day brought trouble. They were crossing through a narrow canyon when 3 men on horseback appeared ahead, blocking their path. Everything about them screamed danger, from their hard expressions to the casual way they rested their hands on their guns. "Well, what have we here?" the man in the center said, his voice oily and unpleasant. "A pretty lady and her friend. You folks would not be carrying anything valuable, would you?" Samuel moved his horse slightly forward, placing himself between Amelia and the bandits. His voice when he spoke was calm, but carried an edge of steel. "We are just passing through. Do not want any trouble." The bandit laughed, and his companions joined in. "See, that is the thing. You are in our territory now, and there is a toll for passing through. The lady's horse and whatever supplies you are carrying should about cover it." Amelia's hand moved toward the small pistol she had tucked in her jacket, but Samuel's voice stopped her. "Amelia, stay behind me." "I am thinking we will take the lady too," another bandit said, grinning to show missing teeth. "Been a long time since we had such pretty company." Everything happened fast after that. Samuel's gun was in his hand before Amelia could blink, and the sharp crack of gunfire echoed through the canyon. The first bandit fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder. The other two went for their weapons, but Samuel was faster, shooting the gun from one man's hand and putting a bullet near the feet of the third man's horse, causing it to rear. "Next shot goes through your chest," Samuel said, his voice deadly calm. "You have got 3 seconds to ride away and forget you ever saw us." The bandits did not need to be told twice. The wounded man struggled onto his horse with his companion's help, and all three galloped away, disappearing around the canyon bend in a cloud of dust. Samuel kept his gun drawn until they were completely out of sight, then holstered it and turned to Amelia. "You all right?" She realized she was shaking, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Yes, that was incredible shooting." "That was too close," he said grimly. "We need to get out of this canyon. There might be more of them." They rode hard for another 2 hours before Samuel was satisfied they were far enough away to slow down. By then, the sun was beginning to set, but neither of them wanted to stop. They pushed on into the darkness, letting the horses pick their way carefully by moonlight. When they finally made camp near midnight, Amelia's emotions caught up with her all at once. The danger they had faced, the strain of the journey, the fear for her sister, it all crashed over her like a wave. She sat down heavily on a rock and put her face in her hands, trying to hold back sobs. Samuel was beside her in an instant, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "Hey, you are safe. They are gone." "You could have been killed," she said, her voice muffled. "Because of me. You could have died protecting me from those men." "But I did not," he said firmly. He sat down next to her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. "Amelia, look at me." She lifted her head, meeting his eyes in the moonlight. There was something in his gaze that made her breath catch, something intense and honest. "I knew there would be danger on this trail," he said. "I came anyway because I could not stand the thought of you facing it alone, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. You are not responsible for the choices I make." "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care so much?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she watched emotions play across his face. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and rough. "Because from the first time I saw you in that general store 6 months ago, arguing with a customer about overcharging, I have not been able to get you out of my head. You were fierce and fair and beautiful, and I knew right then that you were someone special. I have been trying to work up the courage to talk to you ever since, and when I heard you were leaving, possibly to your death, I could not let that be the end of the story." Amelia's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Samuel, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I am not asking for anything from you. Once we get to San Francisco and you are with your sister, I will head to Sacramento like I said, and you will never have to see me again if you do not want to. But I needed you to know that you matter, that someone cares whether you live or die." Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused and strong, and they wrapped around hers with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "I am glad it was you," she said softly. "I did not want to admit it at first, but I am so glad you came with me. I have not let anyone close in so long, not since my parents died. I have been so focused on surviving, on taking care of Margaret, that I forgot what it felt like to have someone take care of me." "You do not have to do everything alone," Samuel said, squeezing her hand. "You are strong, Amelia, maybe the strongest person I've ever met. But even strong people need help sometimes. They need someone to stand with them." She looked at their joined hands, then back up at his face. The walls she had built around her heart were crumbling, and for the first time in years, she was not afraid of it. "I think I am starting to need you," she admitted. The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise, warm and transforming. "I am not going anywhere." They sat together under the stars for a long time, hands clasped, not talking, but not needing to. Something profound had shifted between them, and Amelia felt it settling into her bones like certainty. This man, this cowboy who had ridden into her life at her darkest moment, was becoming essential to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. When they finally lay down to sleep, Samuel positioned his bedroll close to hers. "So I can hear if anything approaches," he said, but the look in his eyes told her it was about more than protection. It was about wanting to be near her, and she found that she wanted it too. She fell asleep to the sound of his steady breathing, feeling safer than she had in years. The fourth day dawned clear and hot. They were making good time, pushing into Nevada territory. But Amelia's anxiety about Margaret grew with each passing hour. Samuel seemed to sense her worry and did everything he could to keep them moving quickly without exhausting the horses. Around midday, they stopped at a small trading post to refill their water supplies and rest the horses briefly. The man running the post was ancient and weathered, with a long white beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You two married?" he asked as he filled their canteens. "No, sir," Samuel said politely. The old man grunted. "Traveling together, though. Folks around here might get the wrong idea about a man and woman riding alone like that." Amelia bristled. "We are not doing anything wrong. He is helping me reach my dying sister in San Francisco." The old man held up his hands. "Not judging, miss, just saying how things look to small minds. You might want to tell folks you are married if you stop anywhere else. Save yourself some trouble." After they left the trading post, Samuel brought his horse alongside Amelia's. "He has a point, unfortunately. If we claim to be married, people will be less likely to cause problems or ask questions." Amelia considered this. The idea of pretending to be Samuel's wife sent a strange thrill through her, even though she knew it was just practical. "All right, Mr. and Mrs. Vance it is." "Mrs. Vance," Samuel repeated softly, and something in his tone made her look at him. The expression on his face was tender and yearning, as if he was imagining what it would be like if it were true. Her own heart responded with a fierce flutter, and she had to look away before he could see too much in her eyes. But it was too late. She was falling for him, had been falling since that first night by the fire when he showed her such unexpected kindness. Every moment they spent together made it harder to imagine going back to her life without him in it. They rode until after dark again, and when they made camp, exhaustion pulled at both of them. Samuel built the fire, while Amelia tended the horses, their movements synchronized from days of traveling together. When they sat down to eat, their shoulders brushed and neither pulled away. "Tell me about your life before this," Amelia said. "You said you worked cattle drives, but what else? Do you have family?" Samuel stared into the fire, his expression distant. "My parents died when I was young, like yours. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I bounced around between relatives for a while, but nobody really wanted another mouth to feed. When I was 16, I ran off and joined a cattle drive heading north. The trail boss was a good man named Jake Morrison. He taught me everything: how to ride, how to shoot, how to survive in the wild. He became like a father to me. Where is he now? Amelia asked gently. Died 2 years ago. His heart gave out one night during a drive. I was with him at the end. Samuel's voice was rough with old grief. After that, I could not seem to settle anywhere. Kept taking jobs that kept me moving, never staying in one place too long. Until Boise. What made you stay in Boise? He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You. I saw you in that store, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to stay somewhere. I took a job at the livery stable just so I would have a reason to be in town, hoping I would see you again. I must have walked past that general store 100 times, trying to work up the nerve to go in and talk to you. Amelia's throat felt tight. I saw you too. I noticed you watching sometimes, and I wondered who you were. I thought you were handsome, but I convinced myself I did not have time for such thoughts. I had to focus on Margaret, on sending her money and making sure she had everything she needed. You are a good sister, Samuel said softly. Margaret is lucky to have you. I just hope I get there in time, Amelia whispered, and the fear that was always lurking beneath the surface rose up again. What if I am too late? What if she dies before I can see her one more time? Samuel reached out and pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She stiffened for just a moment, then melted into his embrace, pressing her face against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and it anchored her. You are going to make it, he said firmly. We are going to get you there, and Margaret is going to fight because she knows you are coming. You have to hold on to that. Amelia let herself take comfort in his strength, in the solid warmth of his body, and the certainty in his voice. When she finally pulled back to look at him, their faces were close enough that she could feel his breath on her skin. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she saw the want there, the restraint he was exercising. Samuel, she breathed. And that was all the permission he needed. He kissed her gently at first, a soft brush of lips that sent electricity racing through her veins. Then she responded, her hand coming up to cup his jaw, and the kiss deepened. It was not wild or desperate, but tender and sweet, full of all the things they had not yet said aloud. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I have wanted to do that since the moment you agreed to let me come with you, Samuel admitted, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I have wanted you to, Amelia said, surprising herself with her boldness. I know the timing is terrible, with everything happening with Margaret. But Samuel, what I feel for you is real. It is the realest thing I have felt in so long. When this is over, when your sister is well, I want to court you properly, Samuel said. I want to do this right, Amelia. You deserve that. She kissed him again, pouring all her hopes and fears and newly discovered feelings into it. When they settled down to sleep that night, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. For a few precious hours, she let herself forget about the urgency of their journey and simply existed in this moment with this man who had become so important to her so quickly. The fifth day brought them to the California border. They were making excellent time, pushing the horses as hard as they dared. The landscape changed around them, becoming more varied and mountainous. Samuel navigated them through passes and along trails that would have been impossible for Amelia to find on her own, and she was grateful all over again that he had insisted on coming. But the strain was showing on both of them. They were down to their last bits of food, and exhaustion pulled at their bones. The horses were tired too, though Samuel monitored them constantly to make sure they were not pushed beyond their limits. We will reach Sacramento tomorrow, Samuel said as they rode. From there, it is less than a day's ride to San Francisco. You are going to make it, Amelia. She nodded, hardly daring to hope. 6 days of hard riding through dangerous territory, and they were almost there. It felt surreal. That night, they splurged on a room at a small inn they passed, needing real rest before the final push. The innkeeper took one look at them and assumed they were married, and Samuel did not correct him. They were given a room with a single bed, and Amelia's heart hammered as they climbed the stairs. I can sleep on the floor, Samuel offered immediately once they were inside. Amelia shook her head. We have been sleeping near each other for days. The bed is big enough for both of us. I trust you, Samuel. They lay down together, careful to keep space between them at first, but exhaustion and the comfort of a real mattress soon had them drifting closer. Amelia turned onto her side, and Samuel curved his body around hers, his arm draping protectively over her waist. She laced her fingers through his and closed her eyes, feeling more at peace than she had since receiving that terrible telegram. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever we find in San Francisco, I want you to know that these days with you have been the best of my life, Samuel murmured against her hair. Mine too, Amelia whispered back. No matter what happens with Margaret, I am not letting you go, Samuel Vance. You are stuck with me now. She felt him smile against her neck. Nothing would make me happier. They woke early and rode hard, reaching Sacramento by mid-morning. From there, they pushed on towards San Francisco, and by late afternoon, the city came into view. Amelia's anxiety spiked so sharply she felt nauseated, but Samuel kept his horse close to hers, a steady presence. The hospital was in the heart of the city, a large brick building that smelled of carbolic and sickness. Amelia practically flew off her horse, her legs shaky after so many days of riding. Samuel was right behind her as she rushed inside. Margaret Harper, she said breathlessly to the nurse at the front desk. She is my sister. I came from Idaho, please. Is she still alive? The nurse checked her records, and every second felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up with a small smile. Room 204, second floor. She is weak but stable. The fever broke yesterday. Amelia's knees nearly gave out with relief. Samuel caught her elbow, steadying her. Go, he said gently. I will take care of the horses and wait here. She kissed him quickly, not caring that the nurse was watching, then ran for the stairs. She burst into room 204 and found Margaret lying in the bed, pale and thin, but with her eyes open. When Margaret saw her, tears spilled down her cheeks. Amelia, she breathed. You came. Amelia was at her side instantly, taking her sister's thin hand in both of hers. Of course I came. I will always come for you, Maggie. They cried together, holding each other as best they could with Margaret confined to the bed. Amelia learned that Margaret had contracted scarlet fever and had been deathly ill for over a week. The doctor had thought she would not make it, but Margaret had fought, and the fever had finally broken. I knew you would come, Margaret said weakly. I kept telling myself to hold on because you would come. I am here now, and I am not leaving until you are completely well, Amelia promised. And Maggie, I have so much to tell you. So much has happened. Over the next hour, Amelia told her sister everything about the journey, about the dangers they had faced, and most importantly, about Samuel. Margaret listened with growing excitement, her eyes brightening despite her exhaustion. He rode all that way with you just to keep you safe? Margaret asked. Amelia, that is the most romantic thing I have ever heard. Where is he now? Downstairs waiting. You have to bring him up. I need to meet the man who has captured my sister's heart. Amelia felt her cheeks heat, but could not stop smiling. She went downstairs and found Samuel sitting in the waiting area, looking nervous. When he saw her smiling, relief flooded his face. She is going to be all right, Amelia said. The fever broke. She is weak, but the doctor says she will recover fully. Samuel stood and pulled her into a fierce hug, lifting her off her feet slightly. Thank God. Amelia, I am so happy for you. She wants to meet you, Amelia said. Will you come up? He looked uncertain. Are you sure? I do not want to intrude on your time together. Samuel, you are part of this now. Please. He followed her upstairs, and when they entered the room, Margaret looked at him with open curiosity. Despite her illness, Amelia could see her sister assessing Samuel with sharp intelligence. So you are the cowboy who kept my sister safe, Margaret said, her voice still weak but warm. Samuel removed his hat respectfully. Yes, madam. Samuel Vance. It is an honor to meet you, Miss Harper. Your sister spoke of you constantly during our journey. Margaret smiled. She told me you rode all the way from Boise with her through very dangerous territory, that you protected her from bandits and asked for nothing in return. Samuel glanced at Amelia, then back at Margaret. Your sister is worth protecting, and I did not ask for anything, but I hope I might have earned something anyway. What is that? Margaret asked, though her knowing smile suggested she already knew. The chance to stay in her life if she will have me. Margaret looked at Amelia with delight. I like him. You should definitely keep him. Amelia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. I intend to. They stayed in San Francisco for 3 weeks while Margaret recovered. Samuel found work at a nearby ranch, refusing to let Amelia spend all her savings on accommodations. She protested, but he was adamant, and she loved him even more for it. Every evening, Samuel would come to the hospital, and they would sit with Margaret together. Amelia watched her sister grow stronger day by day, color returning to her cheeks and life returning to her eyes. And she watched Samuel interact with Margaret with such genuine care and interest that it made her heart swell. Margaret, for her part, adored Samuel. She would tease Amelia relentlessly whenever he left the room about how handsome he was, how kind, how clearly besotted with her older sister. Amelia would blush and protest, but she could not deny any of it. One evening, when Margaret was finally well enough to sit up and eat solid food, she broached a subject that had been on Amelia's mind as well. What happens when I am fully recovered? Margaret asked. Will you go back to Boise? Amelia looked at Samuel, who had been helping adjust Margaret's pillows. They had not discussed their future in concrete terms, though the unspoken understanding between them had only deepened over the weeks. I have been thinking about that, Amelia said slowly. I have loved working at the general store in Boise, but there is nothing tying me there specifically. What if we stayed in California? All three of us? Margaret's eyes lit up. Really? You would do that? You came here to study music, Amelia said. Once you are well, you should continue that dream. And Samuel has been telling me about a ranch north of here that is looking for a foreman. The owner also needs someone to manage the books and supplies. She looked at Samuel meaningfully. Between the two of us, we could make a good living. Samuel sat down on the edge of the chair, taking Amelia's hand. Is that really what you want? To stay in California with me? I want to be wherever you are, Amelia said simply. These past weeks have shown me what life could be like with you in it, and I do not want to go back to how things were before. I love you. Samuel, I think I have loved you since that second night on the trail when you promised to get me here safely. Margaret let out a delighted squeal despite her weakness. Finally! I have been waiting for one of you to say it. Samuel was staring at Amelia with such raw emotion on his face that it took her breath away. I love you too, he said roughly. I have loved you from that first day when you told me you would leave me behind if I slowed you down. You are everything I never knew I needed, Amelia. You are fierce and loyal and so damn beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. I want to build a life with you, wherever that life takes us. He dropped to one knee beside her chair, and Margaret gasped. Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. I bought this 2 weeks ago in a little shop downtown. I have been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. I know I do not have much to offer you yet, but I swear I will work every day to give you the life you deserve. Amelia Harper, will you marry me? Tears streamed down Amelia's face as she nodded emphatically. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. Samuel slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, while Margaret clapped from the bed, laughing and crying at the same time. This is the best medicine I could have asked for. Margaret declared. My sister is getting married to a wonderful man. They were married a month later in a small church in San Francisco. Margaret had recovered enough to stand as Amelia's witness, and one of Samuel's new co-workers from the ranch stood up for him. Amelia wore a simple blue dress, and Samuel wore his best clothes, his hair freshly cut and his boots polished. But the way he looked at her when she walked down the aisle made her feel like she was wearing the finest silk and jewels. The ceremony was short and sweet, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her with such tenderness that more than one person in the small congregation wiped away tears. Afterward, they had a modest celebration at a nearby restaurant, just the three of them and a few new friends they had made in the city. Margaret gave a toast that made both Amelia and Samuel laugh and cry. To my sister, who rode through 500 miles of dangerous territory to reach me, and to the cowboy who made sure she did not ride alone. May your love be as fierce and enduring as the journey that brought you together. Samuel and Amelia moved into a small house near the ranch where he had been hired as foreman. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a small porch, but it was theirs. Amelia took over managing the ranch's books and supply ordering, proving herself invaluable within weeks. The ranch owner, an older man named Mr. Peterson, treated them both with respect and paid them fairly. Margaret moved into the house with them initially until she was strong enough to resume her music studies. Then she found a small apartment near her music school, though she came to dinner every Sunday. Amelia loved watching her sister bloom, pursuing her passion for music with the same determination that had driven Amelia to reach her. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, but every challenge only brought Amelia and Samuel closer. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, their likes and dislikes. Samuel learned that Amelia liked to sit on the porch in the mornings with her coffee, watching the sun rise. Amelia learned that Samuel had nightmares sometimes about the hard years of his youth, and she would hold him until he fell back asleep. They worked side by side during the days, Samuel managing the ranch hands and cattle, while Amelia kept everything organized and running smoothly. Mr. Peterson often remarked that hiring them was the best decision he had ever made, and he hinted more than once that when he retired, he hoped they would consider buying the ranch from him. At night, they would lie in bed talking about their dreams for the future. Samuel wanted to eventually own land of their own, build something they could pass down to their children. Amelia wanted to help Margaret achieve her dream of becoming a professional musician, and she wanted to make sure no woman ever had to feel as alone as she had felt before Samuel came into her life. We should start a fund, she said one night, her head resting on Samuel's chest, for women in difficult situations who need help. I keep thinking about how different things could have been if you had not insisted on coming with me. What happens to the women who have no one? Samuel pressed a kiss to her forehead. Then we will start a fund. We will set aside a portion of our earnings each month, and when we have enough, we will help women who need it. That is exactly the kind of thing you would think of, and it is one of the million reasons I love you. 1 year and 8 months after their wedding, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not wanted to say anything until she was certain. When she finally told Samuel, he picked her up and spun her around, whooping with joy. We're going to have a baby, he kept saying, wonder in his voice. Amelia, we are going to be parents. She laughed, dizzy and deliriously happy. I hope you are ready for sleepless nights and dirty diapers, Mr. Vance. I am ready for anything as long as it is with you. Margaret was equally thrilled, immediately beginning to plan how she would spoil her future niece or nephew. This child is going to be so loved, she declared, and so musical, I will make sure of it. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia suffered from terrible morning sickness in the early months, and Samuel fretted over her constantly. He insisted she reduce her work hours, taking over many of her tasks himself despite his already busy schedule. Mr. Peterson was understanding, giving them the flexibility they needed. As Amelia's belly grew, Samuel would spend evenings talking to the baby, his hand resting on her stomach. You are going to have the best mama in the world, he would say. She is brave and strong and loves you so much already. and I am going to do everything I can to be the father you deserve." Amelia would run her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man who had transformed her life so completely. "You are already the father this baby deserves. You are going to be amazing, Samuel." Their son was born on a crisp October morning in 1885 after a long and difficult labor. Samuel held Amelia's hand through all of it, murmuring encouragement even as she crushed his fingers. When the midwife finally placed the squalling infant in Amelia's arms, both parents wept. "He is perfect," Samuel breathed, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. The infant's fingers immediately wrapped around his father's finger, and Samuel let out a choked laugh. "He is so perfect, Amelia." They named him Michael James Vance, and from the moment he entered the world, he owned both his parents completely. Samuel was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with Michael at all hours of the night. He would sing to the baby in a soft, off-key voice, cowboy songs and trail ballads that made Amelia smile. Margaret visited constantly, completely in love with her nephew. She would play piano for him, claiming he had an excellent ear even as an infant. "He is going to be brilliant," she would declare. "Look how he watches my fingers on the keys." When Michael was 6 months old, Mr. Peterson called Samuel and Amelia to his office. He was getting older, he explained, and his children had no interest in ranching. He wanted to sell them the ranch at a very fair price, with the option to pay it off over time. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and after a long discussion, Samuel and Amelia accepted. Owning the ranch meant more responsibility, but also more freedom. They could implement their ideas, treat the ranch hands fairly, and build something truly their own. Amelia worked even harder on the business side, finding ways to increase profits while improving conditions for the workers. Samuel proved to be an excellent manager, respected by all the hands for his fairness and knowledge. The fund Amelia had wanted to start for women in need became a reality. They set aside money each month, and when they heard of women in difficult situations, they would quietly offer help. Sometimes it was money for travel, sometimes it was a job on the ranch, sometimes it was just a safe place to stay. They did not advertise what they were doing, but word spread quietly, and Amelia received letters from grateful women who had been given a second chance. Margaret graduated from her music program at the top of her class and was offered a position teaching piano at a prestigious music academy. She thrived in the role, but she never moved far from Amelia and Samuel, wanting to stay close to her sister and nephew. When Michael was 3 years old, Amelia became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and she gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine Rose. Catherine had Samuel's gray eyes and Amelia's determination, making her opinions known from the very beginning. Samuel was just as devoted to Catherine as he was to Michael, proving that his heart had infinite capacity for love. Amelia would watch him playing with their children on the floor of their now larger house, and she would marvel at how far they had come from that desperate telegram 7 years earlier. "Do you ever think about that journey?" she asked him one evening after the children were in bed. They were sitting on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Samuel pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. "Every day. It was the scariest and most important week of my life. If I had not heard about you leaving, if I had not convinced you to let me come with you, I would have missed all of this." "I would have missed it too," Amelia said softly. "I might not have even made it to San Francisco. And I definitely would not have this life, this beautiful life we have built together." "We were meant to find each other," Samuel said. "I believe that. Everything that happened, all the hard things in both our lives, it led us to that moment in Boise when you decided to trust me." Amelia turned to kiss him, pouring years of love and gratitude into it. "Best decision I ever made." As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper. Michael and Catherine grew into bright, compassionate children who loved the ranch life. Michael showed an early aptitude for working with horses, while Catherine was fascinated by the business side of things, often sitting with Amelia as she worked on the books. Margaret married a kind music professor when Michael was 7 and Catherine was 4. The wedding was a joyful affair, and Amelia watched her sister exchange vows with the same sense of wonder she had felt at her own wedding. Margaret and her husband, Thomas, settled nearby and soon had 2 children of their own. The Fund for Women in Need grew significantly over the years. Samuel and Amelia eventually formalized it, creating a proper charitable organization that helped dozens of women each year. They hired Margaret to teach music to some of the women they helped, giving them skills and confidence. It became a passion project for all 3 of them, a way to honor how far they had come and to give back to others facing similar struggles. When Michael was 12 and Catherine was 9, Mr. Peterson passed away peacefully in his sleep. Samuel and Amelia attended the funeral, deeply grateful for everything the old man had done for them. His children thanked them for caring for their father in his final years and for making such a success of the ranch he had loved. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised Amelia with a trip back to Boise. They left the children with Margaret and Thomas and made the journey together, this time by train rather than on horseback. It was strange to see the town again after so many years, but also wonderful. They visited the general store where Amelia had worked, now run by Mrs. Caldwell's daughter. They stayed at the hotel where they had spent that crucial night before beginning their journey, and they stood on the spot where Samuel had first approached Amelia, offering to ride with her. "I was so scared that day," Amelia admitted, standing in Samuel's arms. "Not just of the journey, but of accepting help. I had convinced myself I had to do everything alone." "Thank God you changed your mind," Samuel murmured. "Thank God you let me in." "They warned me the trail was too dangerous alone," Amelia said, echoing the words that had started everything. "And you joined me so I would not be. You have been by my side ever since." "Always," Samuel promised. "For the rest of our lives, Amelia, I will always be by your side." They returned to California, renewed and even more committed to each other and to their life together. The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and hard work, challenges and triumphs. They added more land to the ranch, built a proper school for the children of their workers, and expanded their charitable work. Michael grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's fierce loyalty. At 19, he met a young woman named Sarah who had come west with her family, and Samuel and Amelia watched their son fall in love with the same intensity they had experienced. Michael and Sarah married when he was 21, and they built a house on the ranch land, planning to take over more of the day-to-day operations as Samuel and Amelia aged. Catherine proved to have a brilliant head for business. At 17, she was already helping Amelia manage the ranch finances and making suggestions that increased their profits significantly. She also inherited her parents' passion for helping others, and she became instrumental in expanding their charitable organization to include educational opportunities for women. Margaret's children grew up close to their cousins, and the extended family spent every holiday together. There were loud dinners and boisterous games, children running everywhere and laughter echoing through the houses. Amelia would look around at these gatherings and feel overwhelming gratitude for the life she had been given. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Samuel and Amelia hosted a large party at the ranch. Friends, family, and grateful women they had helped over the years all came to celebrate. Margaret played piano while everyone danced, and speeches were made toasting the couple's enduring love. When it was Samuel's turn to speak, he stood and pulled Amelia to her feet beside him. "25 years ago, I was a cowboy with nothing to my name but a horse and a gun. Then I heard about a brave woman planning to ride through dangerous territory to reach her dying sister, and I knew I could not let her go alone. I had no idea that decision would give me everything I have today." He turned to look at Amelia, his eyes shining with emotion. "You have made me the happiest man alive, Amelia Vance. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. Every day with you has been a gift. I loved you from that first moment on the trail, and I will love you until my last breath." There was not a dry eye in the room as Amelia kissed her husband, holding him tight. "And I will love you beyond my last breath." she whispered against his lips. Forever, Samuel. Forever. The party continued late into the night, with dancing and eating and storytelling. Michael danced with his mother, and Samuel danced with Catherine. Margaret played request after request on the piano, her fingers as nimble as ever. And through it all, Amelia and Samuel would find each other's eyes across the room, sharing private smiles that spoke of shared history and unshakable love. As the years advanced, Samuel's hair turned silver, and Amelia developed laugh lines around her eyes from decades of happiness. They slowed down gradually, letting Michael take over more of the ranching responsibilities while Catherine managed the business side. But they remained active and involved, unable to fully step away from the life they had built together. Their grandchildren began arriving, first from Michael and Sarah, then from Catherine when she married a kind lawyer named David at 26. The house was filled with the sound of children again, and Samuel proved to be just as devoted a grandfather as he had been a father. He would spend hours showing the children how to care for horses, how to read the weather, how to be fair and just in all their dealings. Amelia taught the grandchildren to read and to think independently. She told them stories of their family history, of the dangerous journey that had brought their grandparents together. The children would listen with wide eyes, awed by the tale of their grandmother's bravery and their grandfather's devotion. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered again. This time there were 3 generations present, from Margaret and her grown children with their own families, to Amelia and Samuel's great-grandchildren, the youngest of whom was only 6 months old. Samuel stood to make a toast, his hand trembling slightly with age, but his voice still strong. 40 years ago, I made a choice that changed my life. I chose to ride with a woman I barely knew through some of the most dangerous territory in the West. It seemed foolish to some, impulsive to others, but it was the best decision I ever made. He looked at Amelia, who sat beside him with tears streaming down her face. This woman, my wife, she has given me more than I ever dreamed possible. She gave me love, family, purpose, and joy. She taught me that the scariest journeys often lead to the greatest rewards. And she showed me that home is not a place, but a person. Amelia stood, and Samuel wrapped his arms around her. Thank you, he said softly, just for her. Thank you for letting me ride with you all those years ago. Thank you for every day since. Thank you for insisting on coming, Amelia replied, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for being my partner through every mile, every challenge, every triumph. I cannot imagine my life without you in it, Samuel. You are my home. They kissed as their family cheered and applauded. 3 generations bearing witness to a love that had endured for 4 decades and would endure for as long as they both lived. In their later years, Samuel and Amelia would sit on their porch every evening, holding hands and watching the sunset. They would reminisce about their journey, about the early years of struggle and growth, about raising their children and building their ranch. They talked about the women they had helped and the lives they had touched through their charitable work. We did good, did we not? Samuel asked one evening when he was 73 and Amelia was 70. We did very good, Amelia agreed, squeezing his hand. We built something beautiful, Samuel. Not just the ranch or the business, but our family, our legacy. It is more than I ever dared to dream. I just wish we could do it all over again, Samuel said wistfully. Amelia laughed softly. I do not know if my body could handle another 500-mile horseback ride, but I would do it in a heartbeat if it meant falling in love with you all over again. Samuel brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I fall in love with you again every single day. That has never stopped, Amelia. That will never stop. They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. 2 people who had started as strangers on a desperate journey and had become each other's everything. The trail had been dangerous, filled with bandits and obstacles and uncertainty, but they had faced it together, and that had made all the difference. Margaret visited frequently, now a grandmother herself. She would sit with Amelia and Samuel, playing piano for them just as she had done for decades. You saved my life, she would remind Amelia. You rode through fire to reach me. And Samuel made sure I got there safely, Amelia would always reply. We saved each other, really, all three of us. Michael ran the ranch with the same integrity and compassion his parents had modeled. He made them proud every single day, treating his workers fairly and continuing the charitable work his parents had started. Catherine's business acumen had expanded their holdings considerably, but she never lost sight of the values her parents had instilled in her. On a warm spring day, when Samuel was 76 and Amelia was 73, they received word that their charitable organization had helped its 1,000th woman. There was a small ceremony to mark the occasion, and both Samuel and Amelia spoke about why the work mattered so much to them. Every woman deserves a chance, Amelia said, her voice still strong despite her age. Every woman deserves someone to stand beside her when the trail gets dangerous. We cannot save everyone, but we can save some, and that matters. The woman they had just helped stood up and shared her story of escaping an abusive situation with their organization's support. She talked about rebuilding her life, about the hope they had given her. By the end, everyone was in tears, including Samuel and Amelia. That night, lying in bed in the house they had shared for over 40 years, Samuel held Amelia close. I am so proud of us, he said, of everything we have built together. But mostly, I am just grateful I got to spend my life with you. I love you, Amelia said simply. I have loved you for 43 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. And beyond, Samuel added, just as he always did. And beyond, Amelia agreed. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found each other on a dangerous trail and had never let go. Their love story had begun with a desperate journey and a cowboy's insistence on helping. It had bloomed through shared challenges and grown stronger with each passing year. The ranch continued to thrive under their children's management. The charitable organization expanded to help women across the western states. Their grandchildren grew into fine adults who carried forward the values of compassion, hard work, and unwavering loyalty that Samuel and Amelia had modeled. When Samuel was 80 years old and Amelia was 77, they celebrated their 53rd wedding anniversary, surrounded by 4 generations of family. Samuel's health was declining, but his mind remained sharp and his love for Amelia burned as brightly as ever. 53 years, he marveled, looking around at the crowd of people who existed because he and Amelia had chosen each other all those years ago. 53 years since the best day of my life. The best day was when you insisted on riding with me to San Francisco, Amelia corrected gently, her hand in his. The wedding was just making official what we both already knew. Samuel smiled, that same warm smile that had captured her heart on the trail. Either way, every day with you has been a blessing. They lived several more years together, each day a gift they treasured. They watched their great-grandchildren grow, saw Michael and Catherine become grandparents themselves, and continued to support the charitable work that meant so much to them. On a peaceful evening in late summer, Samuel Vance passed away in his sleep at the age of 84, Amelia lying beside him as she had for nearly 57 years. The entire family gathered to mourn the loss of a man who had been so loved and respected. At his funeral, person after person stood to share stories of Samuel's kindness, his integrity, his unwavering devotion to his wife and family. Amelia lived for 3 more years, remaining active and involved in the ranch and the charitable organization. She spent time with her children and grandchildren, sharing stories of Samuel and keeping his memory alive. But everyone could see that part of her had gone with him, that she was waiting for the day when they would be reunited. On the anniversary of the day they had set out from Boise together, 59 years after that fateful journey, Amelia Harper Vance passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 83 years old. Her last words to Margaret had been, "Tell Samuel I am on my way. Tell him I am riding to meet him, and this time I am not scared at all." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstones were simple, bearing their names and the dates of their birth and death. But between the two stones, the family had installed a bronze plaque with an inscription that told their story. They warned her the trail was too dangerous alone. The cowboy joined her so she would not be. Together they rode through danger into love and built a legacy that will endure for generations. Beloved parents, grandparents, and friends, to all who needed help. Every year, on the anniversary of that desperate telegram that had started everything, the family would gather at the graves. They would share stories of Samuel and Amelia, of the love that had defined both their lives. Michael and Catherine made sure their children and grandchildren understood the importance of their grandparents' story, that love often comes when you least expect it, that the scariest journeys can lead to the greatest rewards, and that choosing to help someone else can change your entire life. The ranch continued to prosper, now run by the third generation of Vances. The charitable organization expanded its mission, helping not just women in crisis, but families in need across the western states. It was renamed the Harper Vance Foundation, ensuring that Samuel and Amelia's names would be forever linked to the work they had started. Margaret lived to be 92, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Before she died, she compiled all the stories she could remember about Amelia and Samuel, creating a family history that would be passed down through the generations. She made sure everyone knew that her sister had ridden through hell to save her life, and that a cowboy's love had made that journey possible. The story of Amelia Harper and Samuel Vance became a legend in the family, told and retold to each new generation. It was a story about courage and love, about taking chances, and trusting strangers who turn out to be your destiny. It was about building something beautiful from a foundation of fear and desperation, about turning a dangerous journey into a lifetime of happiness. Years later, when the great-great-grandchildren of Amelia and Samuel asked what made their love story so special, they were told this: two strangers started a journey together out of necessity, rode through danger side by side, and discovered that the greatest adventure was not the trail itself, but the love they found along the way. They built a life on trust, respect, and unwavering devotion. They faced challenges together and never let go of each other. From that first moment in Boise to their final days decades later, their legacy was not just the successful ranch or the charitable foundation or the large, loving family they had created. Their legacy was proof that love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, that choosing to help someone else could lead to your own salvation, and that the most dangerous trails often lead to the most beautiful destinations. Samuel and Amelia's love story was one for the ages, beginning with a cowboy's insistence and a woman's reluctant trust, growing through shared challenges and mutual respect, and enduring for over half a century of partnership, passion, and profound devotion. They had started as two broken souls who had lost their parents young and struggled to find their place in the world. They ended as two halves of a whole, having built something extraordinary together. And on quiet evenings at the ranch, when the wind blew just right across the hills, people swore they could hear the echo of hoofbeats. Two riders, side by side, journeying together forever through the wild western landscape they had both loved so much. The cowboy and the woman he had refused to let ride alone, now riding together for all eternity, their love story complete and their legacy secure in the hearts of all who came after them.